Can I just ask what the carer situation would be for informal carers accessing records? Because you already have the problem with informal carers not being able to get good results in terms of the person that you're caring for.
If I give you a real life example, and there's a story it's in the magazine. I went out to a residential home and I had a lady who was in a residential home in a wheelchair in a sort of bent position like this, but she was very mentally alert, and her next of kin was her niece. Great, except this niece was over in Australia, and she got admitted into hospital having had some sort of funny do. She got discharged from hospital and was told that she was going to need various tests that needed doing. I went into the residential home to see somebody else, and the manager in the home turned around and said to me, "Dr. Hannon, there's this niece over in Australia who's ringing up every day to check whether we've got the results of some tests that she'd had done." Now, that in itself is pretty shocking, but then if I said to you that she was waking up at 2 in the morning in Australia in order to ring here, then you can sort of start to understand how carers really are affected by the way the system we have today. Now, the fortunate thing about this was the lady herself was mentally very alert. So I was able to sit down with her and go through the consent process to ask her whether she wanted access to her records. She went through it all, she understood the benefits as well as the risks, and I was able to give her consent. Having given her consent, able to give her a password. Having given her passwords, she then said, "I now want my passwords to be passed to my niece in Australia so that she can then access the records." So I then passed over my consent process, all the material. I produced a number of videos, as you can see I'm videoing today. I can put the videos onto YouTube so that millions of people throughout the world can benefit from this. So I was able to send all that information to her. She was able to look at the same information that my patients in the practice get. The only question then was, how did she get the passwords? That was the only thing I was not happy to email over, because email is not a secure way of communicating. I said to her, "I'm afraid you're going to have to ring at 2 in the morning into the surgery, and I will confirm I'm speaking to you, and I'll give you the passwords over the telephone." I gave her the passwords. Within 30 minutes of her having the passwords, she sent me an email back from Australia to say, "Dr. Hannon, I didn't know that my aunt's had an MI. Is that the same as a heart attack?" So I looked in the record, and there it said, MI. And I said, "Yes, why do you ask?" And she goes, "Well, no one ever mentioned anything about a heart attack to me. Where's that come from?" So she was on my CHD register, needing all the blood tests and everything else that comes with it. I looked into her record, and what I found was, when she'd had this funny do, her ECG had shown some sort of arrhythmia, some sort of funny wave. The admitting doctor thought that she may have had a heart attack, so he put in query MI, admit. She then went into hospital. She stayed in for 3 days, they did blood tests, ECGs, and ultimately concluded that she hadn't had a heart attack. That letter from A&E that had come back into the practice that said query MI had been coded as myocardial infarction, and she'd now had a code that said heart attack. That shows the power of how carers can look at medical records and actually benefit the patient as opposed to causing harm.